Tony Blair's Babylon, and I think the Palestinian people, they've done everything they've could. I think we as people, London, UK, worldwide, we need to stand up for these people.
Well, it's ludicrous, isn't it? I mean, as somebody once said, it's presumably because Beelzebub wasn't available. And, I mean, you know, his track record in the Middle East is dire.
I really don't know. I was surprised that he became a peace envoy, but they're desperate for peace, so if it works, so be it. Better, he's a devil, you know. I would trust him more than I would trust Trump.
You know, there's a massive demonstration, which I was on, of over 1 million people, and he just took absolutely no notice and just carried on invading Iraq. And just because he wanted to make sure he was in the good books of the USA. And again, you know, really, the people who run the world, which unfortunately at the moment are the super rich.
I think that will be a huge problem because people will see yet again going in an uninvited territory. But the continuation of Israel bombing Gaza is something that needs to be done. The world's standing by, so you know we need to go in.
It might hinder peace, but I think at the current time, anything's worth a go. There's too many deaths. It's got to be tried.
I think the Palestinians should govern themselves without any foreign influence. I think the war's gone on for far too long and it's a bit overly aggressive. So whatever foreign aid has helped, I don't know, because there's a lot in the news you don't quite understand or don't believe.
They've been let down by virtually everybody. What they need, the Palestinian people need their own party, which represents their interests, which they can run democratically, not be in the pocket of either the sort of Qataris, the Saudi Arabians, or the Americans. There's no real long-term solution there.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome again to Syriana Analysis. I'm your host, Kevork Almassian, and I want to thank you very much for tuning in to today's stream, whether you're joining us on YouTube, on Rumble, or on Ganjing World. And of course, special thanks, as always, to our friend Red Access for moderating the live chat and keeping the discussion flowing. He sent me an email the other day telling me that some people are not happy with the presence of Zionists in the live chat, and I asked him to leave them in the live chat. Everybody is welcomed. Freedom of expression and freedom of opinion is welcomed on this YouTube channel, and especially when these opinions reveal the absurdity behind the ideology and the opinions that they are spewing on this YouTube channel. Maybe this helps also other people to make up their minds. So I'm not going to ban anyone, Zionist, non-Zionist, unless somebody is engaged in serious trolling, insults, in order to divert the attention of the conversation on this YouTube channel. We are here for educational purposes, and today we're going to cut through the noise and expose what really happened with Donald Trump's so-called peace plan for Gaza. The headlines made it sound like a breakthrough, a plan for ceasefire, aid, and even a pathway to Palestinian statehood. But behind the stage lights and cameras, the reality was quite different. Trump orchestrated a diplomatic stunt. He posed for photos with Arab leaders, but in truth, he handed the draft straight to Netanyahu, who rewrote it to strip away even the thin promises of self-determination. What we are left with is not peace, my friends, but a blueprint for permanent Israeli control and occupation of Gaza, dressed up in humanitarian rhetoric. And that's not all. We will also take a look at Israel's covert Esther project. Esther project is a secret PR campaign exposed in US filings, which shows how influencers are being paid thousands of dollars per one post to flood social media with pro-Israel content. And to that, Israel's growing pressure on Elon Musk's X platform, and you begin to see the bigger picture, a propaganda war designed to silence dissent and manufacture consent. So stay with me, my friends, because today we're going to unpack how Trump lied to the entire world, about Gaza, and how Netanyahu played along, and what this means for the Palestinians and for all of us who still believe in truth and accountability. So let's start with the edits that Benjamin Netanyahu has made on the already bad so-called Trump peace deal. So as if it was not enough that this was a horrible deal for the Palestinians, for ordinary Palestinians, and now Benjamin Netanyahu has made it even worse by his edits and modifications. So in this stream, I'm going to tell you what are these edits and what do they mean for the Palestinians, and especially for ordinary Palestinians. We're not talking about political parties, but rather ordinary Palestinians. So the key comparisons. First of all, Trump posted a deal, and then Netanyahu made his own edited version. So what are the differences? First, ceasefire and withdrawal. In Trump's plan, it was mentioned that Israeli withdrawal tied to hostages being released and gradual demilitarization. In Netanyahu's edit, he deleted or weakened language about withdrawal, and he kept IDF presence under the name security perimeter indefinite. Israel, according to Netanyahu's edited draft, reserves right to remain in Gaza. The second topic is hostage and prisoner exchange. Trump plan. It's a large-scale exchange, including women and children detained post-October 7, including the Palestinians, of course. In Netanyahu's edit, it narrows prisoner release, removes broader amnesty tone, making it more restrictive. 3, governance of Gaza. In Trump plan, Transitional Palestinian Technocratic Committee under International so-called Board of Peace, chaired by Trump with Tony Blair. In Netanyahu's edit, dilutes international oversight, makes transitional authority more tightly controlled by Israel and US influence, keeping Palestinians as administrators without sovereignty. 4, international role. In Trump's plan, the UN, Red Crescent, and other institutions manage aid and reconstruction. In Netanyahu's edit, he strikes references to Qatar's mediation and limits the role of neutral actors. 8 channels, and accordingly, 8 channels become even more politicized. 5, future statehood for the Palestinians. In Trump's plan, he mentioned quote, a credible pathway to Palestinian self-determination and eventual statehood, though vague and conditional. And worse, in Netanyahu's edit, he removed reference to self-determination and replaced it with vague commitments that never promise statehood. And finally, and this is the 6th, in Trump's plan, he called interfaith dialogue to change mindsets of Palestinians and Israelis. And in Netanyahu's edit, he deleted the Palestinian agency, reframed the change of mindset as Palestinians being forced to accept Israeli terms. So why both are bad for ordinary Palestinians? The Trump so-called deal and the edited one by Benjamin Netanyahu. Because 1, no real sovereignty. Both plans deny Palestinians control over borders, airspace, and security. In both versions, Israel and outside powers keep ultimate control, and this erases the basic conditions of nationhood. 2, colonial trusteeship in the squeeze. Trump's version makes Gaza a kind of neo-colonial protectorate run by an international so-called board of peace chaired by Trump and Tony Blair. Netanyahu's edits make it even worse by stripping away international checks and leaving Israel's hand stronger. 3. Conditional human rights. Basic humanitarian aid, reconstruction, and prisoner releases are made conditional on Palestinians' good behavior rather than recognized as rights. This turns survival into a bargaining chip. 4. Erasure of self-determination. Trump's plan mentions statehood only as a distant possibility. Netanyahu's version deletes even that. For Palestinians seeking dignity and independence. Both frameworks leave them permanently dependent under occupation in all but name. 5. Normalization of occupation. In both versions, Israel keeps a military and security role inside Gaza. Demilitarization is imposed unilaterally, ignoring Palestinians' right to defend themselves under occupation. 6. Impunity for war crimes, and this is very important. Neither of these plans mention accountability for Israel's genocidal actions in Gaza, including war crimes, mass displacement, ethnic cleansing, genocide. Netanyahu's version strips away even symbolic gestures of justice, ensuring total impunity. So the bottom line is, my friends, Trump's plan cloaks Gaza in humanitarian rhetoric, but in reality proposes a foreign-controlled enclave stripped of sovereignty under a Western-chaired so-called trusteeship. Netanyahu's edited version exposes the bluff by cutting even the thin promises of self-determination, ensuring permanent Israeli control, and denying Gaza any real future as part of a Palestinian state. So for ordinary Palestinians, both plans deny the core aspirations of dignity, self-rule, decolonization, and accountable justice, replacing liberation with managed dependency and permanent subjugation. Now, I will show you a photo which was shared by Trump. This photo is a photo of Arab and Islamic leaders. Some of these countries, they have met with Trump. And Trump posted this picture basically as a photo op. Now, I want to make a big disclaimer. I'm not in support of any of these Arab leaders here and Islamic leaders. None of them. Zero. In the contrary, I'm in many cases on the opposite side of these so-called Arab and Islamic leaders. But these Arab and Islamic leaders, when they met with Trump, they have agreed on a certain draft deal for Gaza. And Trump repackaged that, changed that, and presented it as a new deal and claimed that these Arab and Islamic countries have agreed on this deal, but that's not the case. And this is an article published by Sean King, and I want to just mention a few things, how Trump lied to the world about this Gaza deal, right? So this picture that we saw above was taken rather proudly by a group of Arab and Muslim leaders, including several heads of state, during last week's United Nations conference. They had all agreed to a very meticulous ceasefire document with Donald Trump that had many concessions that they gave up, but they felt like it was the best possible path forward. They took the photo. Trump then gave the plan to Netanyahu. Netanyahu then made massive changes. Trump then presented the Israeli plan to the public and told the world the men in this photo all agreed to it, but they didn't. That is the heart of the story. Trump met with a group of Arab and Muslim leaders, took the optics he wanted, handed the draft to Netanyahu, let him rewrite core terms, and then stood at the podium and sold the edited version as if the original authors had approved it. They had not. This is the Israeli plan rebranded by Trump, and it should be rejected. By the way, this is the original plan that Trump presented, right? Because there was a there were negotiations between these Arab and Islamic countries with Trump, and they came with some sort of a ceasefire agreement for Gaza. And Trump went to Netanyahu. Netanyahu made his modifications. And then Trump presented it as if this is a deal approved by these Arabic and Islamic countries. And after declaring this deal, Netanyahu made another edit, another change on this deal. So imagine how much Benjamin Netanyahu has influence on the Trump's administration. So the fact is, this Trump plan presented to the public contains significant changes requested by the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the deal now before Hamas is significantly different than the one the US and a group of Arab and Muslim countries had previously agreed on due to Netanyahu's intervention. Qatar pleaded with the White House not to release the edited plan on Monday due to those objections. The White House, however, released it anyway, then pushed Arab Muslim capitals to back it. And the source of this news is Barak Ravid from Axios. And those who don't know Barak Ravid, he's an Israeli insider. And he publishes a lot of leaks and information, exclusive information from the Mossad and other secret services on his website called Axios. So we assume that he would know the truth about this case. And that's the point. Consent cannot be retrofitted. You don't photograph leaders, let a third party revise their terms, and then claim their blessing. Broadly welcoming an announcement is not the same as endorsing the specific text Netanyahu altered. So, according to Axios reporting, Netanyahu secured edits that tie any Israeli withdrawal to milestones Israel itself can police. The text gives Israel an effective veto over the process, and even if all phases are completed, Israel would remain inside Gaza on an open-ended security perimeter. In plain language, those edits convert a regional framework into an Israeli-controlled timetable with an Israeli lock on the door and an Israeli footprint left inside Gaza indefinitely. That is not the plan Arab and Muslim leaders worked on. This is why I'm calling it what it is, a photo op coup. Meanwhile, the White House's messaging treated the edits and the optics as interchangeable. They are not. Consent is the whole ball game in diplomacy. If you torch it to score a headline, you poison everything that follows. So, this is how also Donald Trump lied to the American public, to the world, about the consent of these Arabic and Islamic countries. Not that they are saints, and I truly believe that they wish that this conflict would be over in favor of Israel, but they were trying to find at least a face-saving deal for them. Trump even didn't give them that, and he went even further and made the first modifications and then the second modifications on the deal. That's how Donald Trump lied again and again and again. There is another thing I want to mention about this deal, and this one comes from Amal Saad. She's an expert on Hezbollah, an expert on the Middle East. She says, it is no coincidence that Trump's 20-point Gaza proposal begins with the demand to transform Gaza into a de-radicalized terror-free zone and later calls for changing mindsets and narratives of Palestinians. This framing reveals the plan's underlying colonial logic and the prioritization of its objectives. It is not merely a question of guaranteeing the Zionist entity's security, in her own words, nor even of a civilizing mission that seeks to remake the native in its own cultural and political image. Rather, it aims to strip Palestinians of both the right and the will to resist. The ultimate objective behind de-radicalization and demilitarization goes beyond disciplining a population and neutralizing an armed threat. It seeks their total pacification, dehumanizing them to the point that they are not simply more governable subjects, but are denied subjecthood altogether. and recast as non-actors whose continuous survival is contingent on their permanent submission. But just as they failed to subdue the Palestinian people through genocide and ethnic cleansing, they will fail again to defeat a resistant spirit that has become a model for humanity. Now, some of the points I agree, and the other points I don't agree with you. And if you remember in yesterday's live streaming, guys, I spoke about how the Palestinian political and armed struggle has changed in its nature and its outlook from the 70s up until today, especially between the 70s and the 90s, and how Israel basically assassinated, decapitated, and killed and exiled many and most of the Palestinian left-wing socialist, communist, Marxist, nationalist leaders and movements, intellectuals, journalists, assassinated them outside even of the Palestinian territories in Lebanon, some of them in Europe, in Rome, in London, and paved the way, created the vacuum for the rise of a more Islamist resistance against them. And that was the strategic investment that Israel has done. And by the way, I have published an article today on Substack. I really don't know if I should read this article to you guys because it's a little bit long. Please let me know in the comments below, but this explains everything which I explained yesterday, and it goes truly in line with what Dr. Amal Saad says. So if I receive now, let's say 5 yeses in the live chat, I will definitely do it because I truly believe this article is very, very important. And it explains everything, especially those who didn't watch yesterday's stream. It could summarize it, everything for them in 10 minutes. So I'm reading the comments now. Maybe I should also play this video again for those who didn't see it yesterday of Ghassan Kanafani.
Why won't your organization engage in peace talks with the Israelis?
You don't mean exactly peace talks, you mean capitulation, surrendering.
Why not just talk?
Talk to whom?
Talk to the Israeli leaders.
That's kind of conversation between the sword and the neck, you mean?
Well, if there were no swords and no guns in the room, you could still talk.
No, I had never seen any talk between a colonialist case and a national liberation movement.
But despite this, why not talk?
Talk about what?
Talk about the possibility of not fighting.
Not fighting for what?
Not fighting at all, no matter what for.
Yeah, and people usually fight for something and they stop fighting for something. So you can't tell me even why should we speak about what?
Well, stop fighting.
For what? Or talk about stop fighting, why?
Talk to stop fighting, to stop the death and the misery, the destruction, the pain.
The misery and the destruction and the pain and the death of whom?
Of Palestinians, of Israelis, of Arabs.
Of the Palestinian people who are uprooted, thrown in the camps, living in starvation, killed for 20 years, and forbidden to use even the name Palestinians.
They're better that way than dead, though.
Maybe to you, but to us, it's not. To us, to liberate our country, to have dignity, to have respect, to have our mere human rights is something as essential as life itself.
So, talk to whom? Ghassan Kanafani shot back when a Western interviewer urged peace talks. That's a conversation between a sword and the neck, Kanafani said. That exchange wasn't bravado, it was a diagnosis. Colonized people aren't invited to negotiate their humanity, they are told to surrender it. I opened my recent stream with Kanafani for a reason. He embodied a secular, revolutionary current that once defined the Palestinian struggle, rooted in anti-colonial thought, international law, and universal human dignity. He believed liberation requires both a pen and a rifle, culture and courage, strategy and solidarity. For that, he was assassinated in Beirut in 1972. When you silence the pen, you narrow the politics. When you narrow the politics, you radicalize the battlefield. That is the story too many refuse to tell. Kanafani's generation, writers, organizers, and political cadres, gave Palestinians a language the world could understand. Exile, dispossession, apartheid, right of return, self-determination. Their literature and journalism stitched Palestine to Vietnam, Algeria, and South Africa. They anchored the cause in the global struggle against colonialism and apartheid, not in a manufactured religious war. This was never Muslims versus Jews. It was colonizer versus colonized, rights versus robbery. Israel understood that language was lethal to its narrative. So it hunted the voices that carried it. After Kanafani came a grim roll call. Kamal Adwan and Kamal Nasser in 1973, Majid Abu Sharar in 1981, and the beloved cartoonist Najil Ali in 1987. Writers, editors, organizers, people who could bridge East and West, resistance and dialogue, were car-bombed, shot, disappeared. Each assassination didn't just end a life, it amputated a register of Palestinian policies that spoke to the world in universal terms. Kill that register and you distort the struggle. Distort the struggle and you deform the adversary you claim to fight. While secular nationalists were hunted, another current grew, first tolerated, sometimes quietly abetted by Israel. Muslim Brotherhood charities, mosque-based networks, religious social work. In the 1970s and early 80s, the leftists, as leftist cadres were exiled or eliminated, these Islamic networks embedded themselves at the neighborhood level. The result wasn't an accident of history, it was the logic of a vacuum. When you decapitate secular leadership, you empower whoever can still organize on the ground. By the time the first Intifada erupted in 1987, the PLO was exiled, the left was weakened, and the Islamists had deep grassroots. Ask yourself the question, who benefits when the face of Palestinian resistance shifts from a UN-recognized national movement speaking the language of international law to a besieged Islamist faction that Western media can reduce to quote-unquote terror? With the PLO, Israel had to answer Resolution 242, settlements, borders, and the right of return. With Hamas, it could repackage the conflict as a front in a quote-unquote war on terror, short-circuiting the legal and moral issues with the oldest trick in propaganda. Dehumanize your adversary and declare him non-negotiable. This shift was an Israeli strategic investment. The proof sits in the wreckage of the so-called peace process. The Fatah-Hamas split after 2006 gave Israeli leaders the soundbite they most wanted. They said, "We have no partners." Every rocket from Gaza became a pretext to stall, to build, to annex by concrete and checkpoint what diplomacy would have required them to relinquish. The two-state solution was not killed by extremists on both sides. It was buried in stages, under settlements, bypass roads, military law, and a blockade that turned Gaza into a laboratory of collective punishment, while a divided Palestinian polity was held up as Exhibit A for permanent occupation. Let's be brutally honest. In Power the Narrative, we face jihadists, not people with rights, and you absolve yourself of the obligations that come with occupying another nation's land. You also trap Palestinians between two impossible demands: disarm under siege or die resisting it. If Israel's story were winning, there would be no need for the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to hold PR huddles with influencers and call social media one of the most important weapons in modern warfare. States confident in law and legitimacy do not need ring light brigades. They need compliance with the law. The scramble to massage the message is not a sign of strength. It is a confession that the images from Gaza have burned through the script. This is why reviving the so-called religious war frame is essential to the project. If the public accepts that this is a clash of faith instead of a question of rights, then genocide becomes security, ethnic cleansing becomes self-defense, and the Nakba becomes a footnote. Depoliticize the colonized and you delegitimize their claims. Replace secular leadership with Hamas by bullet, by exile, or by structural incentives, and you get the adversary you always wanted, one you can bomb without explaining a single settlement. The newest so-called peace plan that ties ceasefire and prisoner exchanges to staged Israeli withdrawals, Foreign Stabilization Forces Technocratic Committee, and the Board of Peace chaired by Trump and Tony Blair is a choreography. It demands the total demilitarization of the besieged, the rehabilitation of ruins under international management, and some distant political horizon if all goes well, like inshallah. Meanwhile, the party that flattened neighborhoods is tasked with judging compliance. Who writes these scripts, I asked? Carpet bombers or comedians? Notice the recurring clause in these spectacles. If Palestinians reject the offer, Israel will finish the job. Heads I win, tails you die. And when such plans are announced publicly before being seriously presented to the forces that control the ground, it means Trump and Netanyahu are interested in narrative gaming, not peacemaking. Set the expectation of a deal, guarantee it is unacceptable or unworkable, and then blame these so-called terrorists for forcing you, alas, to resume the massacre you never paused in good faith. We have seen this play before. We remember how it ends. Western hosts love that line. Why not stop the deaths and misery? As if Palestinians haven't been dying and miserable for generations of encampment, disposition, and erasure, even of their very name. They are better off alive than dead, we are told. Better off alive? Where? In cages? Under rubble? In statelessness without horizon? Decades of refugee life in Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, Egypt, Gaza do not make saints. They make human beings who want their homes back. When you wake to find your village gone and your nation reduced to checkpoints, you do not become a moderate by magic. You either accept annihilation slowly or you resist it poorly. The choice is that cruel. Kanafani's point remains. People fight for something and they stop fighting for something. Tell us what that something is precisely and we can talk. Until then, do not call surrender peace. The Zionist movement has always needed two things at once: to project victimhood and to practice supremacy. It cries for dialogue while expanding settlements. It invokes security while demolishing homes. It pleads self-defense while policing an indigenous people by air. The secular Palestinian movement complicated this inversion because it spoke a language that pierced propaganda. That is why it had to be erased. Replace it with an Islamist current, and the inversion becomes easier to sell. A so-called Judeo-Christian alliance defending civilization against so-called terror. Post 9/11, the marketing writes itself, right? But propaganda cannot build legitimacy forever. Even among states that enable Israel, officials know what they are seeing. You can feel the nervous energy in the influencer summits, the frantic lobbying, the manufactured consent. You can also feel the blowback, the isolation, the pariah status among people, if not yet their governments. No amount of hashtag alchemy will change the fact that Gaza made the mask slip for millions. Reducing Gaza to Netanyahu's war is a cop-out, a way to launder a decades-long program of disposition through the personality of one man. The difference between leaders has been tempo, not direction. Some prefer the slow violence of bureaucratic strangulation, others the shock doctrine of open-air genocide. The objective, erase Palestine as a political subject, remains constant. Netanyahu merely accelerated the timetable and in doing so exposed the project for what it is. This is the core of my argument. Israel did not only fight terrorists. It killed the Palestinian Liberation Movement as a secular internationalist force and thus empowered the rise of Islamist currents like Hamas. It did so by assassinating intellectuals and organizers, by exiling leadership and sabotaging institutions, by tolerating and sometimes encouraging religious networks as counterweights, by splitting the polity and then citing the split as a proof of no partner. In the process, it changed the story from a colonized nation claiming its rights to a besieged enclave hurling rockets, an image tailored for Western fear and compliant media. That is how you bury a two-state solution, not that I'm in support of, while pretending to chase it. That is how you normalize a one-state reality of apartheid while blaming the victims for not being more reasonable. Rebuilding means reversing that perverse incentive structure. It means reviving the secular rights-based register, ending settlements, lifting the siege, freeing prisoners, restoring political rights, and anchoring everything in international law. It means refusing the trap that says Palestinians must first become disarmed, depoliticized, and grateful before they may speak of a state. No, dignity is not the prize at the end of obedience. It is the condition of any durable peace. So, talk about what? To stop the pain? For whom? If you want Palestinians to stop fighting, then give them something to stop for. An end to occupation, a path, home, equal rights in the land where they were born. Until then, petitions for calm are nothing but requests that the neck stop straining against the sword. Kanafani taught that decades ago. The fact that we must repeat it today is not a failure of memory. It is a measure of how methodically the secular Palestinian voices was silenced and how urgently it must be heard again. This is a postscript, it's a note. Some will ask whether this analysis excuses Hamas. It doesn't. It explains the conditions that produced it. Conditions engineered by an occupying power that preferred an enemy it could demonize to a nation it would have to recognize. If you are serious about peace, start here. So, by the way, this is my Substack. For those who are on Substack and would like to read my opinion articles and support the independent work I'm doing there, I would be very glad to see you there as well, guys. I have around 956 subscribers or followers there. If you are on Substack, you can just search Kevork Almassian, or handler is at Kevork Almassian, as you see, and you will find me there. Now, I will remind you of this video of Netanyahu
Christian influencers. Okay, you said we talked about the woke right, and you said I call it the woke Reich. That's a brilliant observation. The woke Reich, because these people, you know, they're not any different from the woke left. I mean, they're insane. They're movies, but they're actually meeting on some of the things. And what we have to do is we have to secure that part of the base of our support in the United States. That is being challenged systematically. A lot of this is done with money. Money of NGOs, vast. Money of governments, vaster. Okay? We have to fight back. How do we fight back? Our influencers. I think you should also talk to them if you have a chance, to that community. They're very important. And secondly, we're going to have to use the tools of battle. You know, the weapons change over time. You can't fight today with swords. That doesn't work very well. Okay? And you can't fight with cavalry. That doesn't work very well. And you have these new things, you know, like drones, things like that. I won't get into that. But we have to fight with the weapons that apply to the battlefields in which we're engaged. And the most important ones are in social media.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important purchase that is going on right now is TikTok. Number one. And I hope it goes through because it can be consequential. And the other one, what's the other one that's most important? X. Exactly. Very good. And, you know, so we have to talk to Elon. He's not an enemy. He's a friend. We should talk to him. Now, if we can get those two things, we get a lot. And I could go on other things, but that's not the point right now.
So basically, he spoke about TikTok only last week. And he said the propaganda war on TikTok is the 8th front in Israel's expansionist war in the Middle East. And very funny timing that his best friend, Jewish billionaire Larry Ellison, bought TikTok in a deal brokered by Trump. And once that happened, I'm going to show you a few things, by the way, in this case, because it's very funny what's happening now on TikTok. And they are banning people now en masse. So if you're on TikTok, I think you should be very careful now if you're on TikTok. So this is one person today posted this. So the comment says, Democrats and Republicans are both controlled by Israel through AIPAC. Do some research. And this comment is removed because it violates the community standards of TikTok. Another thing that is now being banned on TikTok, by the way, is so this is a juice emoji, and it is now banned because they say it is a violation in alcohol, tobacco, or drugs. So the juice emoji, guys, is now banned. Let's see how many emojis are they going to ban in the pursuit of defending Israel. But everything Netanyahu said in this video is basically a projection, because they do all these things. And they have secret programs of funding influencers on social media, one of which was published today in the Jerusalem Post. So this is an Israeli mouthpiece. And this article basically reveals that the Israeli government secretly hired a firm called Bridges Partners. It's called Bridges Partners, LLC, to manage an influencer network under a covert operation code named the Esther Project. Let me show you. This is the Esther Project. So this is the Esther Project, and this is the firm called Bridges Partners, LLC. According to U.S. Department of Justice, filings, the operation involved orchestrated efforts to sway public opinion in the United States, especially among social media influencers, without making clear that the campaign was backed by the Israeli state. Bridges Partners allegedly recruited and coordinated influencers to amplify pro-Israel narratives effectively treating the US digital public sphere as a battlefield for hasbara, or propaganda. The campaign was concealed. The influencers were not informed or were misled about the state sponsorship behind the messaging. The DOJ filing is part of a legal complaint that accuses Bridges of acting as an undeclared foreign agent under the US Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA. The aim was to influence American public opinion, congressional debates, and media discourse, presenting a purported grassroots pro-Israel perspective while masking the Israeli government's role. I mean, it doesn't end here, my friends. Another scandal which hit the Israel and the Benjamin Netanyahu government is this article. Apparently, Israel is paying influencers $7,000 per post. $7,000 per post. So the Israeli government is paying social media influencers in the US roughly $7,000 per post to promote pro-Israel narratives. The operation is run by a firm called Bridge Partners, which invoices the campaign under the name Esther Project. Bridge Partners submitted invoices to Havas Media Germany for a series of influencer campaigns starting in June and expected to run through November, with a total contract sum of about $900,000. Of that, an estimated $500,000 is attributed to influencer payments between June and September, only 3 months. The campaign aimed to produce 75 to 90 posts over that period, putting average individual post payment in the range of $6,143 to $7,372. The documentation filed under the U.S. Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, mentions, quote, payments for influencers and production, quote ended, though it doesn't provide a precise breakdown by individual. Bridge Partners is co-owned by Yair Levy and Yuri Steinberg. The firm describes its mission as fostering, quote, cultural interchange, quote ended, between Israel and the US. It has connections to figures with experience in Israeli public diplomacy and media. So there is apparently a new contract with a US firm called Cloaked, led by Brad Parscale, which is tasked with producing pro-Israel content targeting at Gen Z audiences across platforms like TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and podcasts. Cloak Tower plans to influence AI ChatGPT outputs, optimize search ranking, and integrate messaging into conservative media networks like Salim Media. Cloak Tower works for Havas Media, which is subcontracted by the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs via its government advertising arm. In parallel, Israel previously hired SKDK, a US PR firm, for a similar narrative amplification work. Netanyahu publicly recognized the power of influencers during this meeting, which I showed you, calling social media the most important weapon in the information war. He also expressed interest in TikTok, suggesting it as critical battleground in shaping narratives. So, of course, this revelation is deeply significant and troubling, right? For several reasons. One, this is a covert propaganda. Paying influencers secretly or under the radar to promote state narratives distorts public discourse. Audiences may not even know that content they see as independent is actually part of government-sponsored campaigns. Two, this circumvents US transparency laws. Doing influence operations in the US without full disclosure runs counter to the spirit and possibly the letter of the Foreign Agents Registration Act, FARA, which requires that agents of foreign governments disclose their activities. The lack of detailed disclosure, especially of how much each influencer is paid, of course, is problematic, right? 3 is the erosion of democratic integrity. If a foreign government can flood the US digital media ecosystem with paid pro-state messages, it creates an uneven information landscape. Critical or dissident voices may be crowded out or marginalized. This also shows that this represents a diplomatic hypocrisy. Number 4, Israel positions itself as a democracy and an advocate for free speech and human rights. Therefore, engaging in covert influence seems to undercut those professed values. And it also reveals a willingness to use aggressive propaganda. 5, backlash and credibility risk. Once exposed, such covert operations can damage trust, not just in the influencers or platforms involved, but also in everyone who aligns or is associated with them. It can generate a skepticism of pro-Israel voices more broadly, right? This could be counterproductive for them. Now, the fact that Israel is targeting Gen Z via social media platforms and AI interactions, trying to shape now ChatGPT's outputs and search engine ranking, also shows the sophistication and aggressiveness of its information strategy. So this is a strategic information warfare being waged by Israel against American people. And apparently people like this are paid $7,000. We should all sign up, take their money, and make videos like this. This is literally a $7,000 video, guys.
Imagine supporting people who start wars just to lose the wars so they can cry about it and then try it all again.
You must see anti-Semites are literally obsessed with Jews. Now walk with me. While you must see anti-Semites are stacking eviction notices, Jews are out here stacking up businesses.
Jews control all the industries. Maybe if you spent more time taking notes from successful people, you wouldn't have to spend your nights and weekends spreading hate from your anonymous account with an anime profile picture.
Do you work as hard as Jews? Do you network like Jews? No, because you're too busy cheering on a group of musty terrorists who smell like dirty earring backs. And if we're going to keep it real, you're really mad because your income is giving side hustle.
Period.
How you going to hate from outside, Shabbat? You can't even get in.
I really don't know if they really think that this video would resonate with any serious person or with Gen Z or anyone else. One of the persons made a very funny comment, but I'm not going to repeat it. David, anyways. 7,000. I just want to give you a context. I work 8 hours per day. Like, it's not like 8 hours I'm just sitting here all the time. I don't want to be ridiculous. Nobody works 8 hours without rest, but I work around 8 hours per day. I wake up, I do research, I see what's going on around the world, I decide what's going to be the topic of today's live streaming. I create, so 8 hours per day, 5 live streams per week on this YouTube channel. I create 2 short videos on X per week, and I write around 2 opinion articles on my Substack. And for me to make $7,000, I need months of work. These people can make it with one such ridiculous video. This is for context for you. So imagine how much they are prostituting themselves for money. They don't care about what's going on in Gaza or in Syria or in Lebanon or in Iraq or Iran, because it seems they're also preparing for another war against Iran, by the way. This is a very, very serious scenario. So if you want to know more about this, please tune in tomorrow at 5 p.m. Central European Time, 11 a.m. Eastern American Time. I'm going to cover the possible war against Iran, which, in my opinion, is getting closer and closer and closer, phase 2. So Netanyahu mentioned TikTok and X, right? So look at this coordinated attack now on X. Do you really think this is normal? CNN, Jewish Council for Public Affairs, the Jerusalem Post, Jewish Insider, Metzhat.net, all of them and many others started writing about X. They say Elon Musk's X is going to platform for anti-Semitism. Is go-to platform. So Elon Musk's X is go-to platform for anti-Semitism, study finds. X paused anti-Semitism on X. X is among most effective tools for spreading anti-Semitism in history, research finds. Study, anti-Semitism thriving in plain sight on X. Year-long study finds platform X a major hub for anti-Semitism content and ineffective moderation. So after TikTok, now they're coming after X. So brace yourself, guys, and don't expect much resistance from Elon Musk. He already changed the algorithm. We don't know how honest he is with the algorithm, and many people say now they are reading lots of pro-Zionist content on X all of a sudden. Everything is possible. Tomorrow is very important, as I mentioned, about this possible war against Iran. I wanted to cover it a little bit today, but we don't have so much time because, as the topic is very important, and I want to dedicate an entire stream for that. So stay tuned for this for sure, guys. What to say, ladies and gentlemen? That's all for today's stream. We've seen how Trump's so-called Gaza peace plan was less about peace and more about optics, a diplomatic stunt rewritten by Netanyahu to cement Israel's control, all while Israel runs covert propaganda campaigns and tries to clamp down on free speech on platforms like TikTok and X. The lesson here is clear. The war isn't just fought on the ground in Gaza, it is also fought in the information space. And that's why independent voices matter now more than ever. If you find value in today's analysis, please take a moment to like this video, thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Syriana Analysis so you don't miss future streams. These small actions help me break through the censorship algorithms. And if you'd like to go a step further, consider supporting Syriana Analysis on Patreon. Your contributions, whether big or small, allow me to remain independent, keep producing in-depth geopolitical analysis, and bring you perspectives you simply won't hear in mainstream media. Of course, you will find the Patreon link in the description below. You can also scan this QR code on the top right or left of the screen. And if you don't like to use Patreon, there are different other means in the description below as well. Thank you once again, my friends, for tuning in, whether on YouTube, Rumble, or on Ganjing Word. And special thanks to our moderator with Access and to all of you in the live chat for keeping the discussion sharp and engaging. Until next time, this is Kevork Almassian of Syriana Analysis. Stay informed, stay critical, and see you in the next stream. Peace be upon you, upon your families. Salam.